Good morning. I'm Deborah DeBoer, and this is NASBAR's Friday Fuel. We are delighted this morning to have as our guest someone who is going to be on our panel at our recognition event this coming week. So you're going to get to meet him a little bit ahead, but I would come because he's going to talk about something entirely different there. Anyway, Bryce Fuller, I am so delighted to have you today.
Thanks, Deborah.
We've met before, Bryce, but if you will tell me a little bit about you and your team and how that all works.
Sure. So I have been in the business for 21 years. My family is in real estate. My father and mother owned a brokerage together, and so I was brought up in a real estate family. And I currently work with my mother and my wife on a very small team called the Fuller Force.
So my first question to you is then, how is it working in a family business?
It can be sometimes it can be challenging, but most of the times it actually works out because we all have each other's best interests at heart. There's never any issues about, whose deal is this or anything like that. We all support each other if we have to cover each other for inspections or we have to drop off earnest money or whatever it is, we can just count on each other. So it works out very nicely.
Are you specialized or are you all generalists?
In general, I am the team lead.
Okay.
And I do most of the listing presentations, and I tend to work with my own buyers. My mother kind of has her own business, and my wife, Lori, she does a lot of the support behind the scenes.
Okay. So there is a little specialization
Yes,
with
there
that.
is.
It makes it easier.
Yeah.
One of the things that I read about that you were talking about is you were talking about accountability. And I've been thinking about the things that make successful real estate professionals. Mm-hmm. What makes them successful? One of the things, I think they have to be intrinsically likable. People have to like you when you meet you.
That is true.
There's something to that. But I know lots of people who are likable, but I wouldn't let them sell my house.
Okay.
But you're focusing instead on accountability. Talk to me how accountability comes into play with what you're doing.
So I believe very deeply that if you do the right things consistently and all the time, the results come. That's what I believe. And so, for example, if we're talking about health, if you eat appropriately and if you drink water and if you exercise, you will lose weight. It's just kind of how it works. Mm-hmm. The same is true for real estate in the real estate business. If you are on the phone and you're doing your emails and your text messages and you're shooting videos and you're mailing and you're marketing, you will get the results. That goes even further when you do the right thing for your clients, and then you ask your clients for introductions to other people. Then you get the results. Even greater than before.
One of my other interviews, I had two young men who work in a family business as well. And they were kind of shy about saying this, but they said, sometimes we do the nice thing for our people, mm-hmm. and we don't make as much money. I knew they were thinking about their dad going to advertise that they were doing, but mm-hmm. I thought, you don't understand, that's a great thing that you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes in order to help our clients out to achieve what it is that they're trying to achieve, sometimes we have to do the right thing and the nice thing. Mm-hmm. That is not necessarily in your financial best interest, but it is for the long term definitely in your best interest to do.
I've been thinking about it. I think that that's true, and I do believe that those are the realtors that I want to sell my house or help me buy a house. Mm-hmm. I would have made a guess that I would have been more comfortable with that doing it 20 years ago than I am today. Do you notice a big difference in the way business was? Because you've been in business now 20 years. Mm-hmm. The way business was done 20 years ago versus how it's done today?
Well, for sure, technology has made a huge difference. Although I still believe that even with the technology and social media and everything that has kind of like been developed over the last 20 years,
yes.
At the heart of the business, no matter what, is people. And whether it's connecting over text messages or social media, or you're connecting over the phone or in person, if you don't have that connection with your clients, it's kind of worthless. I know that there is a very big push today for like call centers and virtual assistants that are making outbound prospecting phone calls for you. There's a big push for these mass emails. The problem with that is that there's no interpersonal connection there. And so while it will be successful over a long period of time, I believe that the results are much smaller. So you might have to have a virtual assistant or like an inside call center making 200 phone calls in order to get an appointment, where I can make 5
and have an appointment,
or 10 and have an appointment. Just because it's me making the call and making that connection with the individual, as opposed to somebody in a different country or a different state making that call that has no idea about your business, who you really are, or anything.
We've been in the last few months talking again about, I've talked always about what your value proposition is, always. But I think in the last few months particularly, we've really been talking to agents in terms of when they're working with a buyer, particularly, what's your value proposition? It's surprising to me how many people have trouble articulating what that is. They said, well, I help them buy a house. Not really helpful when you're articulating a value proposition.
Right.
How do you explain your value proposition when you're talking with a buyer?
Well, right now, the biggest challenge that buyers have is speed and access.
Yes.
And the nice thing for my clients is that I have 3 agents that are always available. And I tell my clients that while I may not be able to see that house as fast as you can see that house, you will always have somebody who will get you in immediately. So they can call or text or email or whatever, and we have one of 3 agents that will get them in ASAP. That is sometimes the most important thing when you're buying a house in this market, in this environment. I was representing some buyers recently, and the first showing was at an open house. And there was a line around the corner and down the street to get into this open house. And this is the reality of today's market. And if you don't get in the first 24 hours, you don't even have a shot.
Are you finding your clients are different than they were, say, 5 years ago?
If they're different, it's only because of the market.
That's sort of what I think too.
Yeah, people are nervous about buying a home. They're nervous about selling their home. They need somebody who cares about their feelings, who takes their best interest at heart. That has never changed. But the activities that we have to do in order to help our clients in this market are very different.
One of my last interviews was with another young realtor, and he said, I warn my clients, and I have a feeling he works a lot with first-time home buyers. He said, I warn my clients ahead that you may have to write 4 offers before we get a house.
Yeah. And
I thought, it's sort of like they stole the joy out of buying your first house when I have to start by warning you, you're going to fail, and then maybe. And that, I think, is a big difference when you're working with clients. The clients are coming in with different expectations now. Or even after maybe the first 2, they're different clients than they were when they came in and said, I want to buy a house.
Yes.
And now they've lost 2, and now they're like, you better find me.
Right.
Well, you better find me a house.
Actually, that's very interesting you say that. I had a conversation with my client yesterday who has I've been working with them for about 2 years now. And just through different scenarios, they haven't really been able to purchase the home that they're looking for. And the conversation I had with them yesterday was, this isn't fun anymore.
Yes.
And I tried to explain that if it's not fun anymore, it's because we aren't doing the right things in order to put you into a home. And so you may have to rip that Band-Aid off, and it's going to sting in the beginning, but then once you have moved forward and you've purchased the home, even if it stings you in the beginning, it's your home. You get to enjoy it. You get to live in it. And all the pain and agony that we've been going through for the past 2 years will be gone.
Did they believe you?
I don't know. I hope so.
Well, that's an interesting. I think there are more of those kinds of conversations going on now than and
Yes.
I've been in real estate a long time too, than I can remember. The last time was when the whole market cratered and people were losing their houses.
That's right.
There's some emotional something that seems familiar to me from then.
Right.
You know, that people were real estate was no longer joyful and fun.
Right.
It was hard and unhappy, and I kind of get a sense of that a little bit now.
It is. It's a little bit. I mean, I think that the sellers are having a good time.
Yes, the sellers are having a delightful time.
But in the same breath, it's almost like I think that the reason that people are not having as much fun is because pricing these days is kind of arbitrary. It doesn't even much matter what the price is, because there are buyers out there who are willing to write their checks and make it happen. I'm seeing more cash deals right now than I think I have ever seen in my career.
I think that's true for the last year.
Yeah.
That's what we've been seeing.
And when you're cash, the appraisals don't mean anything. Right.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of parents helping their adult children purchase with cash. It's just a new reality. And so people who unfortunately are challenged monetarily and financially, they're having a much, much more difficult time.
I would think. And that led to a lot of, and I'm not seeing them quite as much now. Well, maybe still, doing crazy things in contracts as well. Giving up home inspections, all of these things that 3 years ago, any realtor would have said, well, you're never going to do those things. And
Right.
Unfortunately, I was in an office the other day and she said, that's the only way we're doing any houses these days, doing some of those things.
There is a lot of that.
Yes.
And I'm also seeing things like non-refundable earnest money.
I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah, like we'll put it down and we're going to close this, and if we don't, it's what is it?
Non-refundable.
Non-refundable, but yes, it's just void. It's
gone.
It's forfeit.
It's forfeit. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a scary thing, isn't that?
Yeah, it is. When
Yeah.
people are desperate, buyers are desperate.
Yes. Well, and I think it's challenging for sellers. You know, you said sellers are having a good time, but I don't think the sellers are having. It sort of seems like you're having a good time, but I always use the phrase I've been using is golden handcuffs. My husband and I refinanced our house. We've been in the house about 8 years now. We're an 8-year couple. At 8 years, we want a new house. I said to my husband, don't you think maybe we should look at a new house? And he said, so tell me where we're going.
Right.
Tell me where we're going.
Right.
And he said, anything we buy, unless we move way out of state, anything we buy, we will get less than we have and pay more money for it.
It's true.
So I'm not sure that it's great for the sellers in some respects.
Yeah.
In some respects either.
I agree. There are a couple of I'm working with a couple of different sellers right now that are going through transitions. I mean, and the truth of the matter is that people only sell real estate when they have to go through a transition. There's no reason. I think there's like 7 reasons why that is, the 7 Ds, and
Right.
I can come up with that. But right now, the ones that I'm seeing are people who are, doing a lot. There's a lot of estate sales right now. There's a lot of people who are going into like assisted living.
Yes.
And so that is, and then there's the divorces. But those are kind of like, you're right. I mean, it's kind of unhappy reasons to sell, but that is what the market is. That's
Because the rest of us are saying, "Oh wait, we'll
wait.
We'll wait. It's a nice house.
Why would
Where
I
am
give? Why would I give up my 3% mortgage?
Right.
To go into a 7.
Right. And get less house, and I don't like it as much, and I have to start all over again with everything.
Exactly.
Yes, we're the reason that there's no houses for them. I am the reason. I'm an example of the reason why there's low inventory.
Yes.
And if people are waiting
Great
for,
job.
thank
Thanks
you
a lot, Debbie.
thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
I'm telling you. And if people are waiting for those 3% interest rates to come back, I think they have a long wait ahead of them.
I don't think that it will ever go back to 3% in my career.
In my career either. No.
I think that we will probably get down to around 6% and maybe a high 5, but that's going to be where it's going to settle, I think.
And I think too, and then it'll normalize, and people will just get used to it, and they'll go back to buying and selling houses.
Right, and
Clearly.
then we're going to have the same type of market that we had in about like 2016, 17, where People marketed for a month or 2 months before.
Yes. Oh, it was terrible. They had to wait 30 days, honestly.
That's right.
Yeah, that'll be a whole new learning thing
That's
that you
right.
have to teach sellers all over again.
That's
then.
right.
Tell me what you like best about your job.
I love, my absolute favorite thing is a happy client. That is my favorite thing in the whole world. When people are thankful and grateful and they express it to me, that is worth so much more than a paycheck, because it just makes me feel warm inside.
Okay. And here, Bryce, because we know each other only a very little, tell me something about you that I got lots of interesting answers to this question. Tell me something about you that I don't know.
About me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, this is where you're going to have to start editing. Do you
Okay.
do you know that I was in Hollywood?
I do not know that you were in
Okay.
Hollywood. What did you do in
Okay.
Hollywood?
Okay, so this is kind of my career path.
Okay.
I graduated University of Illinois in business administration, and I went and worked for a corporation, and that corporation, after 2 years, let the entire sales force go. All right? And so I was only 23 years old, and I had been laid off from my first job. Mm-hmm. And I kind of looked around, and I saw everybody who's my age now look like the sky was falling. And I said, I don't want that ever to be me. I'm going to enjoy my life. I'm going to do things that I've always wanted to do. So I went back to school and got a second degree in filmmaking. And after a year and a half, 2 years, I had a second bachelor's degree. And I moved out to Hollywood, and I was a screenwriter in Hollywood. At least I say that loosely. But
okay.
But I did. I worked for production companies. I was story editing for 2 different production companies. And I had screenplays that were optioned, and I won awards out there. And after 3 years out there, I couldn't pay the bills anymore. But yeah, I lived in Hollywood for 3 years and
had a whole different life.
Hold a very different life.
I'm always convinced. One of the other people told me that they did belly dancing.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the other ones that I remember, we did this as an exercise somewhere, and someone said to me, "What did you do? What's the most unusual thing about you?" And this woman who was managing one of the companies, this staid, proper woman said, "Well, when I was in college, you know those cages where the go-go dancers danced at the discotheque at the clubs? I was that girl."
Oh, that's so funny.
And everyone went, and I've never thought of her in the same way ever
so
again.
funny.
I'm not going to think about you now. You're my Hollywood guy.
That's right.
I love that. Bryce, it's been lovely to spend the morning
Thanks,
with
Deborah.
you. Thank you so much for coming and spending the time. Yeah. I know you're going to have a great time at our recognition event.
I'm looking forward to it. And thank you so much for this.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Just a note, the views of our guests may not reflect the views of the North Shore-Barrington Association of Realtors.